Brooks, and I'm an energy informed mental health therapist and clairvoyant healer. And in today's episode, I wanted to talk with you about happiness and why you shouldn't really be focusing on happiness. I know, crazy, right? Maybe a little controversial. A therapist who says you shouldn't focus on happiness. So the reason you shouldn't focus on happiness as your sole source of happiness or contentment in life is because happiness is fleeting, and often happiness is achieved through hitting personal goals. And this can be in our control and this can be outside of our control. Like maybe you are an entrepreneur and you set a goal of selling a certain number of spots in a program or hitting a certain income level 1 month. Sure, you can take actions that will likely lead you to your goal, but whether you hit that goal or not is out of your control. Okay, so another reason I do not love focusing on happiness, um, again, this relates to goals, is that even if we achieve our goals, we might end up being really unhappy. I know that one of the most unhappy times in my life was when I hit this big goal I had back in my business that I've since gone on to sell, which is I hit the $1 million mark. We had done $1 million in sales in 1 year, and this had been a big goal of mine. And once I hit it, I was just kind of like, is that it? I guess that's it. Wait a minute, but that was supposed to make me happy. And now that happened, and I was happy for a minute. I bought a nice bottle of champagne, did a team cheers, but then I was like, but now what? And I felt a big emptiness inside because the reality was I had put so much of my attention and focus on achieving this goal that once I hit it, I felt a little deflated because that dopamine rush lasted for a minute and then it was gone. And then I was left going, but now what? And I felt very aimless. And my husband, who spent about 10 years, I think 10 to 12 years getting his black belt in Kung Fu, he said the same thing when he eventually got his black belt, which was he kind of went through this period of like, but wait, now what? Like I hit my big goal and now what? So that's another reason I don't love focusing on happiness and kind of tying these goals to happiness. And kind of the third thing here, which isn't necessarily about goals, but it's that oftentimes we do pleasurable things that make us happy that in the short run are like they feel fine. Like maybe like I get off work, I'm really tired, so I'm gonna like open up a bottle of wine and maybe one glass turns into four, or maybe if you're someone who, kind of copes with stress through sweets, you might find yourself binge eating on the couch or doom scrolling on Instagram, like whatever the thing is that, might lead you to a sense of happiness or pleasure in that moment when you kind of look at the longer term trajectory of um, what your purpose is and what's going to lead to greater long-term satisfaction. You might find that, oh geez, these things that work in the short run to make me feel happy actually are creating some conflict or tension with these things that are actually more important than happiness, which is what we're about to get into, which is what this video is about, which is don't focus on happiness, focus on this instead. And that this is focusing on values, and not just values, but aligning yourself with those values. And oftentimes when you achieve greater alignment in your life, and this can be alignment with a couple of different things, and we're going to talk about that, but when you achieve alignment in your life, you will likely be more happy on a more consistent basis. But the goal isn't happiness. So let's start by talking about what are values, because I have to be honest, before I started doing this particular type of therapy, which is called acceptance and commitment therapy, I didn't really know what values were. I kind of like lumped them in the category of like ethics and morals, but values are pretty distinct in that they are beliefs and principles that guide how we live and act, kind of how we show up every day. Um, they help us to, once we know our values, they help us to make decisions, determine priorities, and kind of dictate how we treat others. So a couple of examples of values are you could have a value of curiosity, creativity, adventure, kindness, compassion, um, peace. There's all different types of values that may or may not be important to you. And the reality is, when you look at like a big list of values, you might be like, oh, well, these are all important to me. These are all my values. Yes. And when you can begin to hone in on a few core values, say I try to get clients to come down from like, well, we'll usually start with like 6 core values. And then after a couple months, I'll bring that value sheet back and I'll go, remember these 6 core values? Well, let's talk about maybe just what are 3 to 4 key core values here that you find you resonate with more. And so then they'll kind of whittle it down and we can get even a better idea of what's most important to them. So the reason values are a great indicator of ongoing satisfaction in life is that we don't necessarily get to choose our values, but we can control whether we're living by our values or not. So when I think about values we live day in and day out, and they help us get closer to this bigger life purpose that we feel we have. Um, and they can just lead to more satisfaction, which feels more stable than happiness. So I'm not saying happiness is a bad thing, but if happiness is your number one goal, I recommend finding more of it by focusing on values versus an alignment with those values versus solely focusing on happiness. So getting clear about what your values are is key, and then figuring out what actions you can take every day, including today, to live in greater alignment with those values will actually make you happier in the long run, even though happiness wasn't your goal. So focusing on alignment tends to put us on this longer term trajectory where we are thinking more long term about the type of life that we want to live and the type of person that we want to be. Um, and this is going to make us think about our decisions more for how they lead us in the right or the wrong direction over time. So for instance, if you are just led by happiness, then you might go, well, I want a piece of chocolate cake now, so I'm going to eat that piece of chocolate cake now. You know what? I had a hard day at work, so I am just going to veg out and watch TV today. And all of those are pretty harmless in and of themselves. But if you're creating patterns and habits of behavior based off chasing kind of a dopamine hit or a little rush within of happiness, you can see how over time, maybe a greater value of yours might be your health, and vegging out in front of the TV and like eating Twinkies every day. While that might feel good in the moment, it's not going to be great in the long run for your health, which is possibly may or may not be a value of yours. Hey, if health is not a value of yours, then maybe that's not important. But, we kind of have to decide what our values are and then look at what actions am I taking daily that are in alignment with those values. I find that once clients get clear on this in their therapy process with me, that a lot shifts in their life really quickly because instead of just having this sense of, let's say, I'm unhappy in my relationship or I'm unhappy in my job, they start going, I realize that I'm not in the most aligned partnership because my values are X and their values are Y. And so we're in this place where we're constantly feeling like we are butting heads, but neither of us is wrong. We just have different values. And I'm really considering, do I want to be in a partnership with someone who has such different values than me? So that could be a change that comes about. Or the same with, people coming in saying, I'm really unhappy with work or my career. You can kind of look at what's the rub, where's the tension with where your values are not in alignment with the profession, career, job that you're in. And then is that something you're going to be able to shift, or is like a bigger change needed? For me personally, it kind of made me feel less like I was kind of cuckoo, where I was just like on this emotional roller coaster of, this person does this to me or this job does that to me. And it just made me feel a little bit more in control, like, oh, I own who I am. I own what my values are. And this is why I've always had tension in these types of relationships or these types of jobs, because they were sort of, against my values or they weren't in alignment with my values. And so then I always was made to feel wrong, where I'm right. Like your values are fine. Like we say values again are like ice cream. There's no wrong flavor, but pistachio's the best. No, just kidding. But we say your values are like vanilla and chocolate ice cream. No one's wrong for liking vanilla ice cream versus chocolate ice cream. It's just some people like vanilla, some people like chocolate. Values are like that. So we live in this world where a lot of people can walk around and say, hey, you're wrong, you're wrong. But really, if we kind of dig a little deeper, we just find that maybe we don't have shared values. And then you get to decide, like, do I want to surround myself with people who have different values, the same values, or I don't really care. And that's up to you. So that's what I got for you today. I wanted to share that I do have a little free resource. It is a 20-minute masterclass. It's called Self-Healing 101. So if you're someone who is on your journey in finding greater alignment in life, I find that there are some key energy practices that have just helped me kind of clear some of the clutter so I can find my own answers about what things are. For instance, if you go to figure out what your values are, which I'm going to have a link below to a good little values exercise for you to complete, if you would like. If you go to do that exercise and you're feeling like, I'm confused, I don't know what my values are, I don't know who I am, you might need to just get some of the energetic clutter out of your space that might be keeping you from finding your own answers, which really is a healing process. So check out my free masterclass, my 20-minute Self-Healing 101, link in the description below. And I look forward to seeing you next week for my next video. Thanks, everybody. Bye.